Coming up, I'm taking you to the Planet Hollywood Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas to see one of the most extravagant magic shows in town. Of course, I'm going to tell you about the prices for the tickets. I'm going to show you the seating chart, tell you everything you need to know. I'm Mike the Vegas Guy. Thank you for joining me once again as I attempt to rate and review every show playing in Las Vegas. And this is my review of CRISS Angel, MINDFREAK. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to do the thing I usually don't do on my channel. I know if you've watched my videos a lot, I usually don't stop here like everyone else does. But please, if you enjoy my content, could you please hit the like button? And I would love it if you'd hit the subscribe button. And if you hit the subscribe button, please hit all notifications. Don't hit personalized notifications. That's not good if you want notifications. But I'll settle for just a regular subscription. And if not, hitting that like button would really help me out. Carrying on. CRISS Angel performs at the aptly named CRISS Angel Theater upstairs, the second level of the Planet Hollywood Hotel and Casino. He has been appearing there since 2019 after a long run over at the Luxor. The show is titled MINDFREAK after his hit television series from the early 2000s. If for some reason you are not familiar with CRISS Angel, he made a name for himself on television with his own TV series, where he introduced his very own brand of kind of shocking street magic. He eventually turned that series into a live stage show in Las Vegas, where he has been performing ever since. This show is all spectacle. CRISS Angel was heavily influenced by rock bands such as KISS growing up, and that influence is definitely present in his show. Lots of pyrotechnic special effects, flames coming out of the floor. It is part magic show, part 70s, 80s rock concert. And now this is technically unrelated to the review I'm going to give, but I should mention he has partnered up with Alice Cooper, and in the early spring of 2026 is going to be doing a series of shows at this theater in Vegas with Alice Cooper. It sounds really exciting. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it to that show, but I will try to, and stay tuned to this channel if you want a review of that when it comes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This is definitely a more adult-oriented magic show. There is a warning when you go to buy tickets. The show is recommended for ages 10 and over. It is not recommended for young children, and I would not recommend it for young children. There are darker, dare I say, violent themes to this show. It is loud, it is in your face. It is different than any other magic show you may have seen before. I will circle back to the content of the show and what I think of it a little later on, but let's get down to the nuts and bolts, why you probably tuned into this video. Let's talk about the tickets, let's talk about the seating, and I will elaborate on that age restriction as well. First and foremost, according to their website, this show performs Wednesdays through Sundays at 7 p.m. But like so many shows, and as I've said so many times on this channel, those times are subject to change. Always check the listings when you go to buy. As of the time I am recording this, late 2025, his schedule is all over the board between now and that Alice Cooper engagement that I mentioned, which is coming up in March. The show has some dark weeks where they're not performing, and to make up for some of those dark weeks, they've added performances on Mondays and Tuesdays all over the place. So go to Ticketmaster, go to CRISS Angel's website for the most accurate information. It is important to note that sometimes they add performances at 9 o'clock as well, so they do 2 shows in one night. Let's talk about the theater. This is a really great showroom. There are really no bad seats. This show itself is a massive, big spectacle of a show, so you very well may want to sit a little further back, and as you will see on the seating chart, they also charge more for some of those better seats that actually are a little further back. If you take a look at that chart here, you will see it is kind of like a stadium-style seating. You will enter through that middle aisle between the 100 and 200 sections, and you'll either walk down towards the stage in the 100 section or up some steps into the 200s. Now you will see that there is a balcony, that 300 level section. That is usually not on sale. If you look on Ticketmaster, you'll find that whole section blacked out. According to my research, the tickets in the balcony section usually sell for the same price that you see in that lowest range, the last 2 rows on the sides, $104.80 Presumably, if a performance starts to sell out, usually the day of, maybe the day before a performance, they will open up that balcony if the demand requires it. I can tell you that I have sat in the last row of that 200 section. You have a perfectly good view of the show from there. They seem to be pricing the tickets in this theater according to how people purchase tickets, as opposed to how good the view actually might be. I've mentioned this in many of my show reviews before. This is how most shows grade their ticket prices. Most people just assume that they prefer to be in the center section, and they tend not to purchase the seats to the side. So often you will find the tickets to the sides in most theaters to be discounted more than in the center. That is the case here. This room really does have very good sight lines. If you can find a better deal, a lower priced ticket further to the side of the theater as opposed to in the center, but a little closer up, further down, that's going to be a great deal for you in this showroom. You'll notice a majority of the seats in the theater go for that mid-range 166.01 in the yellowish orange color there. The rear seats, 143, I forgot to mention. But then those 166 go all the way down to the front row. And they simply charge a premium for the center aisle seats in those side sections down in the hundreds. And then, of course, the whole center section of the 100s, that's 177.26. Now, there's just two other rows where they have increased the price. The very front row, row A of the 100 section, is the top tier, $202.92. Simply an upcharge for the thrill of being in the front row. But you will also notice that the front row of the 200 section in the center, just a handful of seats to the sides of the mixing board, those are $188.53, the next highest price. That is a great view, I'm not going to lie. This is a large show. You really can't go wrong to be sitting a little bit of the ways back to get the best view. If you are not concerned about the cost of your tickets and you really want to see this show with the best view, I would recommend grabbing that front row of the 200 section if you can for $188. But those sides as well, you just across the aisle in row A of the sections 203 or 201 for $166, that's a great deal as well. I'm going to talk about discounts, but before I do that, there is a VIP meet and greet package. If you are a huge Criss Angel fan and this is your one and only trip to Vegas and you've been dying to see him and you would like to meet him at a little pre-show reception, $620. That is in addition to whatever ticket you buy. So you can sit in any seat in the theater, doesn't matter which section you purchase in. It is a separate charge, but you do have to buy your ticket to the show separately. $620 gets you a pre-show meet and greet with Criss Angel. He has an autographed program. There's a lot of swag. You get a few merch items. Of course, the signature lanyard, which doesn't actually get you backstage access. It's just a souvenir. The description says you can have a drink with Criss Angel. I'm assuming that means they're including a drink, but it didn't explicitly say that. It does say that there is a limit of 10 people only for this meet and greet, which is really great in the world of meet and greets. So many of them these days are cattle calls. They're really impersonal. You get shoved into a room, you have 1 second to pose for a picture, and you really don't get to spend much time with the celebrity you're paying to meet. I did not purchase this meet and greet myself, so I can't say exactly how it goes, but they sure make it sound like it is a bit more casual than your average meet and greet, and it better be for the cost of $600. That is one of the most expensive meet and greets, at least for some of the resident shows in Vegas right now. Here's the good news and bad news about these tickets. Like I said, the theater is a great room. You're never too far away from the stage. It is stadium style seating. There's no obstructions. I had a very difficult time trying to find any kind of discounts for this show. Prices always fluctuate, of course. I always tell you to do your research, do your homework. I always have my Vegas.com affiliate link in the description of my videos. It never hurts to still do your homework. You might find a deal here and there, depending on the season, depending on how well the show is selling. You will be hard-pressed to get into this room for less than $100. I know that in the past, not too long ago, in this year, I've done research into this show and have found tickets for, you know, the $70 to $80 range. It was not obvious to me that they used dynamic pricing for this show, but I'm sure there's some degree of fluctuation throughout the seasons. So again, the prices I'm quoting you here are just as of this recording. Do your research for when you make your visit. This is just a rough idea of what the tickets cost. So let's get into what I think about this show. I'm a magic nerd. I've made no secret of that on this channel. Criss Angel does some really spectacular, large-scale magic. He also does a lot of classic magic, but he does everything with his own spin. He does a trick in this show that is 100+ years old. It's a trick Houdini used to perform. But when Criss Angel does it, flames shoot out of the floor, there are fireworks. It's a big spectacle. In my opinion, sometimes that can take away from the magic. When you see a show like this with so many moving parts, flashing lights, flames, pyrotechnics, distractions, you can often convince yourself that maybe the trick wasn't that impressive. Houdini would do that trick outdoors, surrounded by people in broad daylight. People could not believe their eyes. But when Criss Angel does the same trick with all the lights and the smoke, you might be able to say to yourself, oh, well, it was probably the lights, the lighting tricks or something like that, mirrors, who knows. Criss is doing really impressive magic and then layering on top stuff that isn't magic. It's just spectacle. Now, there's something to be said for spectacle. The prices for this show are not cheap, but all that spectacle costs a lot of money. So as I've said in previous reviews, like shows like O that have a high price tag, you're paying a high price tag for an expensive show. This is an expensive show to put on night after night, so the tickets are not going to be dirt cheap. There was a time in Vegas's history where most shows had huge budgets and always gave you this level of spectacle. So if that is the kind of show you're looking for, this is right up there with one of the best in town. If you are a magic purist, on the other hand, you might think that there's a little too much flashiness surrounding the magic in this show. Furthermore, in terms of content warnings, I mentioned that there is adult content. Not necessarily adult content, it's made for all ages. They recommend that children younger than 10 do not come. There's just some sort of dark, loud, scary elements to this show. But you very well may be an adult who does not like that kind of show. This show is really intense. Loud, flashing lights. It is a sensory overload. It is also beautiful. There are some scenes in here that are really spectacular to see with your own eyes. It is an incredible experience. But just know that that age restriction is more of a warning about just how intense this show is. I would give it a PG-13 rating if we were using the motion picture rating system. But if I have to give you any kind of warning about this show, it is just really intense to see. This show is really impressive. You will see some incredible state-of-the-art, some of the greatest magic of all time in this show. But given the content, given the fact that it is not necessarily suitable for all ages, and the fact that the ticket prices are just a little too high for my taste, I wish that there was at least one price type under the $100 mark to make it a little more accessible to everyone. So with all that, I'm going to give this my 4-star great show rating. It is a one-of-a-kind show. It is one of the biggest and flashiest and most expensive shows, and it has an expensive price tag to go along with it. If that kind of really intense, over-the-top show is what you are looking for, then it is worth the price tag. But if you are shopping around for magic shows, and if you're shopping around for magic shows, it's very possible you are shopping for your family and you have kids of different ages, this might not be the show for you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for hitting that like button. As I asked you earlier, I appreciate it. Tell me in the comments if you have been to see Criss Angel. What did you think? Do you agree with my review? Tell me in the comments which show you would like to see me review next. Until next time, I'm Mike the Vegas Guy.